Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. I'm very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching, and welcome to Friday's edition of the dceu Daily. If you're feeling charitable, please smash that subscribe button. You're never going to do it, are you? And smash that like button. I think about 8 to 10 of you did that yesterday. Thank you very, very much. Keep on telling people about the channel. I've got over 70 views yesterday. That may sound pathetic to you lot, but to me, that was a marked improvement. So thank you very much for giving the channel the attention I think it deserves. Yeah, you probably think I'm pathetic, but I kind of like myself. I know, funny that. So today we're going to do it. Today we're going to do it what I've wanted to do for a long time. I've done the whole countdown of the best DC movie of all time, but now we are going to put Man of Steel versus Batman v Superman. What is the greatest movie? There has to be a winner. I can't just say, well, I like both of them. No. There has to be a winner. And I think whoever I choose is going to upset someone. I know many Zack Snyder fans and Zack Snyder dceu fans will always plump for BVS, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you yet. Right? We're going to discuss this, right? We're going to pick these movies to pieces and try and work out, for me, and then I want you to comment down below and let me know what you think, right? But I think this is an interesting thing because Man of Steel is more of a popcorn chomping mainstream movie than BVS is. Now that's interesting. But when I first saw Man of Steel, in fact, when I saw the promos for Man of Steel, it was like, wow, that's what you think. Wow. And you think the same when you're seeing the trailer for BVS. But even when you see the trailer for BVS, you can tell that there's more talking, there's more analysis of Batman and Superman. It's that trailer when you hear the voice going, isn't it surprising that the most powerful man in the world is controversial? Whatever that voice says. So when you and it kind of the dolly zooms into that great Superman statue they've got in BVS as well. So you already know this is a kind of more of a darker analytic film of these characters. And then you see the close-up of Batfleck, right? Bruce Wayne, right? Ben Affleck, and you can see that he's looking, he's trying to decide whether he should put the costume on or not, right? So you can already see this is a different type of film. But when you're watching the trailers to MOS, it tells you something. There's going to be a lot of action and a lot of fighting. This is like Superman, like we've never seen him before. Because one of the complaints, many complaints of Superman Returns, was that it was boring and there wasn't enough action. And in fact, Warner Brothers told Bryan Singer when they originally ordered the sequel, and they did originally order the sequel, right? Even though they weren't overly pleased with the reviews and the box office, but they at first said, go on, Bryan, but we want more action. So one of the things, a lot of people have a go at Zack, oh, it's too many explosions, too much action. That, my friends, that came directly from the top. That's what they wanted. I'm not saying Zack wouldn't have done that anyway, right? Let's not forget that Zack Snyder had nothing to do with the story and the narrative of Man of Steel. This is what annoys me. When we talk about Man of Steel, nobody gives any credit or criticizes David S. Goyer or Christopher Nolan. If you like the film, talk about Chris and Dave because they constructed the whole story. In fact, the DCU was the original brainchild of David S. Goyer. He was the one, as they were writing The Dark Knight Rises, who said, let's stop a minute. I have an idea for a Superman movie. And he convinced Chris Nolan to go to Warner Brothers and pitch it to them. And they said, great. Because they were the top creatives at WB Film at that time. So if they pitched a film about a guy sweeping the floor, right, and burning his broom, and there being an investigation about what happened to the broom, Warner Brothers would have done it. They were gods at the time because of what they did with the Dark Knight movie, right? But it is funny to me when people do talk about Man of Steel, they never talk about Chris Nolan and they never talk about David S. Goyer, which is wrong. It's all about Zack. Let's be clear here. Zack Snyder created the look of Man of Steel. He created the look of the DCEU. He created the look of Krypton. They allowed him, to make the film the way he wanted to do it, but not narratively. So when people blame Zack Snyder for the breaking of the neck of Zod, right? Superman breaking Zod's neck. That was totally David S. Goyer. And even Christopher Nolan took him aside and said, I think this is a bit much, Chris. And somehow David S. Goyer convinced Chris Nolan that it was a good idea. He got it. So nobody ever talks about Chris and Dave. And I think if you like Man of Steel like I do, I think you should at least give him a little bit of credit. Zack had nothing to do with the narrative, but the look of the film and the way it's shot, all Zack Snyder, and it's stunning and it's beautiful and it works. It's brilliant. This is why Chris Nolan chose him, right? And Chris Nolan knew he couldn't direct a Superman movie. He admitted he didn't have the ability to make an awesome Superman movie while sitting in the director's chair. So when you watch Man of Steel, there are deep commentaries. There's the commentary about us looking to other planets to leave the Earth because it's becoming poisonous to us, right? It's an environmental commentary in the film. But ultimately, this is more of a mainstream movie than Batman v Superman is. So it has depth. It has character development. It's a great movie in its own right. But it is. What I like about Man of Steel and BVS, they're both very different movies, but if you put them together, they are one movie. They're following the same narrative. It's a continuation. It's all about the consequences of the Battle of Metropolis, right? And that's why they've got Ben Affleck there at the start of BVS, seeing it from his point of view. And already you can tell he's getting really wound up and concerned about Superman's presence on Earth. So it's great. So when you go to BVS, BVS is not a mainstream movie. Did you know, after the executives of Warner Brothers first saw BVS, they gave the film a standing ovation. Very rarely do Warner Brothers execs or studio execs stand up and give a film a standing ovation. So for me, I think they knew. They felt they had a really good movie on their hands. They didn't see an issue. Now, they understood it was a different type of movie, but they thought they had another Dark Knight on their hands. And after I saw Batman v Superman, I felt this was going to be award season's biggest film. Now, anyone who hates the film is going to say, you're a nutter. I can't be watching you anymore. But I genuinely thought, because I didn't read any reviews before I went to see it for the first time. I saw it about a week before release. That was great. So I thought the critics were going to love it. And this was just the theatrical cut, not the extended edition. So when I saw the reaction, I was shocked. I didn't expect people to hate it. I thought it was an amazing film. It had action. It had development. It had great commentary. The deconstruction of Superman and Batman is amazing. But one of the major reasons that a lot of people didn't like BVS was the deconstruction of both characters. Now, I don't understand that, because he does deconstruct these characters, but then he reconstructs them at the end of the movie. So you've got Batman. He's darker. He's angry. He wants to kill Superman, right? But by the end of the movie, when he says, I failed him in life, I won't fail him in death, he's been reconstructed. When Superman says to Lois, this is my world, you are my world, he was deconstructed, then he was reconstructed. But people never talk about that. So they go around this arc through the whole film, and they get reconstructed after their deconstruction. What's so wrong with that? That's great storytelling. So that's one of the most fabulous elements. What I love about, let's talk about the Ultimate Edition rather than the theatrical cut, is that this film starts in a certain place and it builds and builds and builds. I suppose it's a bit like sex. When you're having sex, guys, right, you build and you build, then you explode, right? I know it's a bit crude, but that's like Batman v Superman. It's the build-up. It's a build-up. You see everything that's going on, how Superman is treated, how Batman feels about Superman and the world now, right? And then you get this big, awesome CGI battle with Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman fighting Doomsday. It's amazing. And then I haven't even mentioned Lex Luthor and how brilliant and intelligent and methodical this guy is. And he succeeds in his goal. He pits these gods against each other, right? I think it's a wonderful film. I really do. And look, it's boring. I've said it so many times how much I love it and how much I love MOS. But we're pitting these two movies against each other. So what do I see as better? Now we have to look at this film. I suppose if you're in one of those moods where you just want to watch the greatest action movies, the greatest Superman movie, the greatest superhero movie, and you don't want to get too deep, it's going to be Man of Steel. You're going to watch Man of Steel. So what I'm going to do is talk about the qualities of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. Then I'm going to make a decision, right? Man of Steel is a great origin story for Superman. It starts on Krypton. We really get to know Krypton. We understand what's going on. We understand the politics. We understand why Zod's doing what he's doing. We understand the positions of all the characters. But then at the same time, we see this great planning with the help of VFX and CGI. The whole thing of Jor-El on that creature, I forgot what he calls it, right? Brilliant. And when he goes and he takes what he takes, I've forgotten what it's called, right? The skeleton thing, so you can put the DNA into Clark's DNA, right? That whole sequence, everything, him being shot at, it's just brilliant. It really is brilliant, and it sets the narrative of the whole, the Codex. That's what it is, the Codex, when he does all that. But it sets the narrative of the film, and I love it. And you've got to understand, Superman the movie is so iconic, so they couldn't just do what's already been done. They went, and they really showed us Krypton. But to be fair to Superman the movie, we saw Krypton, but they didn't have the budget or the VFX to make it as awesome as Zack did. But I do think that John Barry did a great job with Superman the movie. He didn't direct it, but he created the look. Amazing, beautiful. And they used whatever they could use. It was all shot within the camera, so what a great achievement. And then they do something very different when Cal is kind of travelling around space and he arrives on Earth. We don't see his childhood at first. We see him as an adult. We see him as a man travelling around the world, right? And that's interesting. But then he has the flashbacks from his time on Smallville. It's a very, very different way of doing it. I was really, really shocked. At first, I wasn't sure if I liked it. But then I realised it was actually a good idea. And it works for the narrative of the movie. It builds up to that moment, right, when he puts the costume on. That moment behind me. What an iconic moment that is. So, Man of Steel has everything a mainstream blockbuster should have. Man of Steel is a mainstream blockbuster, but it's Snyder, it's Goyer and Nolan, so there's a lot of depth in it. But then when you go to Batman v Superman, this is more like an indie kind of movie rather than this, this high-core blockbuster. So they created this indie superhero movie, right? Deconstructing two of the most iconic characters in fiction, right? And then they reconstruct them again. So I want to make it clear before I announce my decision that these films are very special to me, very special to a lot of people. But for me, Man of Steel is the better one. That doesn't mean I don't like BVS. It doesn't mean I think it's a bad film. There's no reason. There's no reason. I'm not saying it's a negative reason, but I do enjoy Man of Steel a lot better. And I think there's got to be a director. I'd like 3 hours of Man of Steel, by the way. I'm sure Zack's got scenes, but we're fighting for the Snyder Cut right now. So I'm saying that Man of Steel is my preference between Man of Steel and BVS. But BVS, is an amazing film. And I don't want you lot thinking that I have any issue with the film, because I don't. Right, before I go, I want to talk about Martha and Lois, Martha Kent and Lois Lane. Now, in the Justice League movie, the theatrical cut of Justice League, we saw a horrible scene in the Daily Planet between Martha and Lois. Now, we know who Joss Whedon is. I mean, I'm surprised that someone hasn't revealed that someone didn't ghostwrite and produce and direct Buffy and Angel, because surely it's not the same person that did Justice League, right? And I've made excuses for Joss in the past. That is the worst part of the movie. Even worse than the horrible lip CG they did on Henry, right? you've got this moment when this guy comes in, this reporter, and says something to Lois, and he wants to know her source. So he says, "Is it a girl?" And she just says, "Yeah." "Oh, is she good looking?" and things like that. And then when he leaves, Lois goes to Martha, "It isn't a woman, right?" And this is Whedon trying to display some toxic masculinity. Terrible moment. But then you get the exchange between Lois and Martha. Don't forget, these are two women that have both experienced the same loss, but from two different perspectives. One's Clark's lover and one's Clark's mother. There was a beautiful scene shot by Zack Snyder for Zack Snyder's Justice League. He's explained it, and it sounds amazing. This wasn't emotional. And what about what's going on the TV with this woman who lost the caretaker working with Cyborg's dad, right? Who was killed by Steppenwolf. They made it into a comedy, right? My husband was taken by aliens. Get those aliens. That should have been either don't use it or use it as a heartfelt moment, right? That caretaker had a really good kind of exchange with Silas Stone. Make it emotional, not into a joke. So that scene between Martha and Lois is horrible, right? There's a moment in that scene, there's something that Lois says, and I forgot what it was, but it's so cringy. It's so cringy. The whole scene is cringy, and it's terrible. And it just not just does a disservice to those characters that Zack built up in Man of Steel and BVS. It does a disservice to those iconic actors, and they're both brilliant in those characters, right? I love Diane Lane as Martha. I thought she did a great job in both MOS and BVS. Same as Amy Adams. And that scene takes all the hard work that those two women did in those roles in those first two movies. And it's more evidence that Whedon simply doesn't have a clue. And his protestations that he's a feminist and he respects women go down in flames. Not only in that scene, but in the other scene when the Flash falls on top of Wonder Woman, right? Do you even know what feminism means, Joss? Because I don't think you do. Anyway, hopefully we get the Snyder Cut sooner rather than later so I can smash that theatrical cut in front of you on the DCEU Daily, here exclusively on Big Mouth. Comment down below, like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with more DCEU Daily. Remember, don't get triggered because I preferred Man of Steel over BVS, even though I still love BVS. It's just a bit of fun. We're having a bit of a debate. Let me know what your favourite film out of the two is in the comments down below. See you again tomorrow.